No. Can I just get someone in the chat just to say, yes, we see the slideshow, everything looks great. Just a little like affirmation. Yes, thank you. Awesome. So just like Stephen said, my name is Stephanie Z. I use the she, her pronouns. I'm the director of the Wellness Center. And I'm here with my colleague, Ashley Pizzoni, who will introduce herself more so when it's her time to continue on the presentation. And we are just wanting to talk about supporting your well-being and what our resources at the Wellness Center are offered to your students. Go ahead, Ashley. Awesome. So before we begin, we just want to practice some of the skills that we do with our students, but also teach them so that way they can do with their friends. And so I would just ask you all in the chat quickly just to drop what is your current internal weather report? So if you were giving someone your weather forecast, what would it be? So for instance, I'll start while you all are thinking. I would be like a day that the wind is starting to pick up. I was the technical difficulty, so I apologize for that, trying to log on. But now the wind is starting to slowly die down. So that would be my weather forecast. Ashley, do you mind sharing? And then we'll see what folks have written in the chat.
Sure. I'm gonna say partly cloudy. There's some sunshine. We have our trauma-informed yoga tonight, so that is the sunshine, but it's not for many hours, so that's where it's the partly cloudy.
Thank you. And I think, Carol, you wrote partly sunny. I love that. Do you mind sharing? Oh, and Joe, you wrote sunny, lots of sunnies. Any particular reason that you are sunny? Just maybe one example in the chat as to why. Is it because you're attending this webinar? Because I totally agree. That's why you're sunny. And also no pressure if you don't want to share. Okay. Well, we'll move on just for the sake of time. But this is something really simple that you can do with your student, that your student can do with their friends, that what we do with our students, right? You might hear things like highs and lows, maybe tell me like a good thing that happened. This just is a way to regulate, starting to regulate a nervous system, right? It gets someone thinking about tracking how they're feeling, but then also maybe recalling like, oh, a partly sunny, like maybe this day hasn't gone as well as I wanted it to. And they served my favorite cupcake in our student union. So this is just one skill set, and we'll go over some more towards the end. So thank you. Okay, next slide. All right, so just a quick overview. We're going to talk about mainly our student health counseling and well-being, mainly the wellness center portion. But just to give you all a sense of, I like to think of us as a trifecta. So we work closely with student medical services, our counseling and psychological services, and then us, and then emergency medical services. Okay, that's not a trifecta, that's more like a square, but you get what I'm saying. So together we make up this department of student health counseling and well-being. And we all work together to, I'm sure you heard, right, cure personalis, educating and treating the whole student, right, through personal growth, academic success, well-being development. So this is the office that Ashley and I work in. It's the Wellness Center. We are in a very cute little house. It's on 852 Market Street. It's across from a really big residence hall called Swig. And so it's kind of nice. Students really enjoy coming to our office because they feel like they're getting off campus, which essentially they are because they're crossing the street. So it's not on the main campus, but we're still part of campus, and our office is set up to be very like this cozy nook for folks to come and do homework, have a little bit of a respite from the busy day. And so hopefully when you all come to bring your student to campus, you can stop by and see the space for yourself. So how do we get there? Well, Bucky's going to show us. So there he is crossing the street, and then he'll stop right in front of, he'll go inside. All right. So that's a quick, very simple, straightforward a way to get to the our office. You also can put it in Google Maps, and that's very easy for folks to kind of use it. All right, so meeting with staff. So I introduced myself. And I have three staff that I supervise. So one is here, Ashley. The other two are Jason Munoz. He's the Assistant Director for Substance Use and Recovery Programs. And our other Assistant Director is Daniel DeHarn, who is the Assistant Director for Violence Prevention Programs. And so I'll go over a little bit about what Jason does and how that can relate to supporting your student, and then just one of our resources that we offer in our office. So this is Jason, and he does wellness coaching. And so what that means is he works collaboratively with the students to explore strategies to achieve whatever goals they're wanting. So some topics, as you see there, are time management, procrastination. That can lead to academic extracurricular stressors, whether it's I don't have time to manage all of that, or I have those, so I can't study, or I want to be involved, but I don't know where to begin. Substance use moderation. So here we operate from a harm reduction model where we work with the student as to what your goals are, right? So if you're like, I don't want to, if a student is like, I don't want to drink every day of the week, Jason will work with them of like, okay, let's come up with a plan. And then how do you, do so in moderation, just as an example. Practicing communication skills. So if a student is feeling a little bit anxious in social situations or wanting to be able to maybe confront a friend about some behavior that they've done, right? Jason can do that as well. And then overall exploring what living a healthy life means to them. And it's great because coaching wise, the student is the one that's in charge, where Jason is kind of like, let me, hearing out the student, offering some questions and sounding board to get a student to think about, okay, here's what I'm wanting out of this. And then one of the student groups we have are peer health educators. So they work closely with Jason. And what they do is they're all about creating this environment that we like to say pro-social, right? So it's really creating this um, inclusive environment that allows students to connect with one another. So they do that through promotion of our well-being resources from the office, as well as doing joint programming with their violence prevention educators, which Ashley will talk about. And then here are some examples of programs they've done in the past year and this year. So we have goat yoga. Yes, you heard that right. It's yoga with goats. They do a thing called Gratitude at the Bronco, where they set up a table and they ask students to express what are they thankful for, right? Again, kind of recalling like maybe I'm having a bad day, but there is still something to be grateful for. We offer naloxone training, right, to help combat opioid overdose. Bark and Brew, where we bring in therapy dogs and we serve matcha or cold brew. We have a upcoming Walk for Hope, which is a walk that raises money for a local suicide prevention organization. And then during winter quarter, which was this last quarter, we do winter well-being, where we do programming focused on our 8 dimensions of well-being. So it's kind of a program a week that focuses things on like financial wellness, communal, vocational, etc. And now I'll turn, oh, last one, sorry. Is this me? Yes, this is me. Lastly, is that our peer educators, this is kind of like our approach, I would say, like our mission is that we come from a community of care. So part of as a Jesuit institution, we do foster accountability and compassion. So you might have heard sayings like challenge and support. We'll never let a student like be on their own necessarily, like, oh, too bad, you got to deal with that, or shaming, but more of like, okay, so here's what happened, and now you're experiencing kind of the aftermath, right? So what can we do to maybe begin to move forward or to heal from the situation? We are evidence-based prevention, so on interpersonal harm, relation, dating violence, substance misuse, all of that contributes, right, to impact our well-being. And actually, we'll get more into that. And then lastly, our primary modality is peer-led education for eliminating harm, because we know that us as professional staff, we can say things, to students, and it's kind of like in some ways like an adult or a parent, like, yeah, I hear that. But if their peer is saying to them, Hey, you should really check out the wellness center. Hey, you should schedule a meeting with Ashley. Hey, you should attend this program that the peer health educators are putting on, the violence prevention educators are putting on. Students are more likely to do so. In fact, when we have students who show up in our office for the first time, we often ask, like, oh, what brought you here? How did you know about us? And a lot of them will say, like, oh, my friends have come in to use the massage chair, or my friend sees someone here to talk about time management. And so they said this would be a great place for me to come in.
Thank you, Stephanie. So hi everyone, my name is Ashley Pizzoni and I am the Assistant Director for Student Survivor Advocacy and Campus Support. I am going to speak about our violence prevention work as well as our survivor advocacy work. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so we are doing a lot of work intentionally this month, focused on healing and survivor voices. But I just want to start off kind of setting the context just around why Santa Clara has both violence prevention and survivor advocacy, as many universities do. And it's really because harm is such a pervasive issue, specifically for this population of individuals. Um, Unfortunately, young adults, college age, are at increased risk of experiencing harm. RAIN, which is the national organization around sexual violence awareness and prevention, um, they report that 13% of college students have experienced sexual harm during their time in college, identifying that 26.4% of female identified students and 21% of students with non-conforming identities reported experiencing sexual harm, as well as 6.8% of male identified students report experiencing sexual harm during their time in college. And with that, only they report about 4 out of 5 students that do experience harm don't report it. And of that small proportion, they're saying that so few students and individuals actually seek support from or receive support from victim service agencies. And so, as an institution, recognizing the increased risk, we're not only focused on the prevention piece, but also ensuring that students have the space to know what their options are, learn about the resources, have support, and safety planning. So, kind of going into our violence prevention work, we have our assistant director, Danielle DeHarn, as well as a team of 8 students that do intentional programming around interpersonal violence, healthy relationships, and bystander intervention. The violence prevention educators have done a lot of workshops with our Greek life, so the sororities and fraternities around bystander intervention, violence prevention, how to support survivors, as well as a specific training on, they call it their party safety, where they do a Narcan training, as well as have more intentional time to work on those bystander intervention skills while identifying like how to do that when people are at a party, when people are drinking. And so they have done that, oh my gosh, the last 4 years, really doing that intentional work. I will also say myself and Danielle, at the beginning of the academic year, when sorority recruitment begins, she and I meet with the Panhellenic team, and the incoming students who are looking to go through recruitment, and talk about the support and the services that we offer and how to maintain their mental health, sense of belonging, and safety at the same time. And then that kind of gets into the survivor advocacy piece. So I support students that experience all forms of interpersonal harm, whether that's dating violence, familial violence, sexual harm, stalking. And this these experiences could happen to students before they come to Santa Clara, and I support them in their healing journey, whether the harm happens here or before attending Santa Clara. Um, we do a lot of emotional and physical and technological safety planning. I give people the space to process what their rights and options are, whether it's medical exams, legal support, going through Title IX, and really just walk alongside them throughout their journey and really help empower them to make the best decision for themselves. Given that we know that trauma is a profound and meaningful loss of control over one's own experience. And so my role is really to help them identify where they have control and safety in that moving forward. And so that is something that I share with all of you today, knowing that um, whether your child comes to you after an experience of harm or because their friend experienced harm and they're trying to navigate how to support their friend or navigate what is the best space for them. Just knowing that your role as they're coming to you, they're going to be so nervous to disappoint you. They're going to be filled with their own shame and guilt and trying to make sense of what has happened. Um, and the greatest gift that you can give them is just that care and that presence. And being able to know, like, you're going to have your own feelings and your own emotions about it and want to seek accountability and justice for your student. And that is so valid. And in that moment, giving the space to your student to just be heard, to know that you believe them, or even giving them those tools and helping them navigate that if they're supporting a friend, can really be so impactful on someone's healing journey. Um, in addition to one-on-one advocacy, we also have two currently two student programs for survivors of harm, and also for people that are supporting their friends who've experienced harm. So our first one is Healing Community Nights, which is held Thursdays in the Wellness Center. It is a space to um, engage in artistic expression. We have community building circles. People have a shared meal every time, and it really is a peer-led space that they are co-creating this trusting, safe space, and working through experiences of harm and trauma in ways that feel right for them. And then also we have our trauma-informed yoga, and this is specifically for individuals that have experienced sexual harm. And so each week we cover a different psychoeducational topic like trauma, self-compassion, boundaries, our window of tolerance, and how to regulate our nervous system. And then that flows into our yoga flow, which is more of a restorative flow, with different modifications based on what someone needs in that moment. This is the first year we've done the trauma-informed yoga, and it really has expanded each quarter, which is really wonderful to see that people are engaging in different forms of healing. And then finally, we have two student groups for individuals that one are curious about minimizing or reducing their substance usage. So Burnout Broncos is a peer-led group that is providing space for students that are interested in lowering their substance usage, but also connecting with other Santa Clara students that are sober or sober curious as well. And then we also have One Night at a Time, which is an AA group for young adults, not just for Santa Clara students, but in Santa Clara County, individuals can attend that group as well. And I'm going to pass this back over to Stephanie, as sometimes the topic around my work can cause some dysregulation. And so we're going to have Stephanie kind of go through some of the things that we cover with our students.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. And just like Ashley said, sometimes, or when your student shares things like if they have been harmed, if they've been sexually harmed or experienced violence or so for their friend, you also may have a reaction, right? And so while we are giving these skill sets, helping students build these school skill sets, we also want to share them with you because it is stressful to have your student, whether it's your first student or however many, and go to college either close by or far. It is stressful, right? And so we want to just offer things that you can do as well. Maybe you can do them with your student to help regulate nervous system and to help them navigate their time here at Santa Clara. So the first one is understanding stress and the well-being zone. So I don't know about you, but growing up, I learned it was either you're stressed or not stressed. And actually, stress is a spectrum. And too little stress is actually not very optimal because if you think about you're driving along on the highway and all of a sudden the car in front of you slams, if you were too laid back, too little stress, you wouldn't respond quickly enough to avoid a fender bender, right? But we want to be where it says optimum stress in the yellow because then we're able to respond quickly. Maybe we can avoid, we switch lanes really quickly, or we can avoid getting rear-ended or rear-ending somebody else. It's when we get into the orange red, this too much stress overload, burnout that we really want to pay attention and do some of these skill sets. Maybe they're attending like a trauma informed yoga, right? All the programs that we offer to just help them then to be able to bring back down, as the students share with me this week, get to feel the earth, like bring the earth closer to them, which I loved. As a way to be grounded. So it's just a fine balance, right? Also, the way I like to think about stress is preparing your body to, yes, to survive, but also preparing to whatever it is. So for students, it could be preparing to take that really hard test that they know that's going to help their grade, or maybe, put them in a situation where they might not be doing so well in a class. Maybe it's an interviewing for an internship or a job they really want. Maybe it's talking to someone they've been really wanting to talk to, right? So stress can help prepare a student or us for that pretty like exciting, or I wouldn't say dangerous situation. The other thing I'll bring up is the well-being zone, otherwise known as the okay zone. So we're not feeling like kittens and rainbows all the time, right? When we're inside the okay zone, that just means we have the capacity for most flexible, and we're the most flexible and adaptable to things that are happening to us. Oh, I think it went away.
I don't know what happened. I'm so
That's
sorry. Let me
that's
stop
okay.
sharing and reshare.
It's okay. I'll just, yeah, no worries. So, for instance, thinking about the situation I shared, you're running late to work, right? And then there's traffic on the highway, and the car in front of you all of a sudden slams, and you slam your brake, and you miss it. Phew, right? But now if you were in a place where you're like, I'm doing okay, your well-being zone, you might jump up. As you can see, there's these ups and downs, but then you can get down and feel a little bit settled, right? If you were in a place where you weren't within your well-being zone, which we'll see, actually, if you want to switch to the next slide, actually, that'd be great. So this is an example of the well-being zone, okay zone. As I said, you see it's a natural ebb and flow up and down, right? We're going to experience things that they're not going to feel good, quote unquote, but if we're in the well-being zone, we're able to manage them with flexibility and adaptability, right? We're able to kind of like, as they say, roll with what's going on, right? Kind of go with the flow. However, go ahead and switch to the next slide. If we experience a traumatic, stressful event or stressful, traumatic reminder, so in this situation, almost getting rear-ended, running late to work, and we weren't maybe in our resilient zone, that's going to bump us out of our okay zone, right? And so we'll either get in the high zone and the low zone or the low zone, and we're just going to have all kinds of feelings. So you might feel really irritated that the car in front of you slammed on their brake because you're running late for whatever it is. And now the car in front of you is an incompetent driver, right? So you're irritated, you might angry, you might say an expletive in the car. Or you could also be like, you know what, forget it. I don't care. You might feel this like numbness, like whatever this day, right? Kind of in the low zone. And that's just a very, I would say, like a low level traumatic stressful event. But just like Ashley was sharing, students can also experience high ones, right? Still mental health. They could be struggling with their classes, which then kind of contributes to that. They've experienced interpersonal violence or they've been supporting someone who has, so therefore they're secondary survivor in that, right? So we're doing a lot of things to help manage and bring folks back into their okay zone, regulating the nervous system. But it takes a community, so we do offer these things, but as family or having a relationship with your student, these are things you can do too. And we might not use language, like I don't use language with my partner of like, hey, have you regulated your nervous system? But I will ask him like, hey, so tell me about your day. What was something that didn't suck, right? And maybe he did have a long day, but he can think of one thing that wasn't as bad as the rest of the day, and that immediately does already work of like bringing him back down into a grounded to the earth. So one of the skills that's super easy to do, in addition to like asking someone their weather report or checking in, is a skill called resourcing. And resourcing is anything that causes you to feel calm, peaceful, joyful, even neutral. So, but just anything that's not going to make you feel like manic or irritated or numb or fatigued or anything. It can be a real thing, it can be imagined, it could be internal, external, it could be tangible, right? It could be a memory, whatever it is. So I just have here on this slide some examples of my resources. So physical movement is really important to me. I never am one to be like, woohoo, I'm so excited to go to a cycle bar. But when I'm there and I'm actually moving, I do appreciate my body. I appreciate sweating, and I feel like, I'm getting the activity I need for my body um, to grow, like to continue to do what it needs to do to maintain its function. I love going to K-pop concerts. I do love K-pop. I am going to see BTS, if any of you are also BTS fans. And so this is an example, or this is the picture of me at a show. And then the last thing is like, I have a cat. Her name is Alice, and I'm a little bit infatuated with her, as you can see. And so she's somebody that I often think about when I'm having a rough time, like, oh, I can't wait to go home because she's happy to see me. This is when I was living by myself. She's happy to see me. She'll make biscuits on my belly, those kind of things. And so resourcing, go ahead, Ashley. Expanding the resource can be more than, it could be anything like a smell, a sight. If you went on a vacation and you saw the sunset on the beach, right? That could be something that brings you a sense of peace or calm, a touch, taste, sound, places, people, or fur, or I like to say scale, whatever kind of creature you might have, traditions, whether it be organized or like mindfulness. Here, right, at Santa Clara, we are rooted in the Jesuit tradition. We do have a church on campus, right? But we also do offer, right, like mindfulness, yoga, etc. And so just thinking about, and you don't have to say it in the chat, but like you probably have resources that you go to that you think about that helps you to kind of calm yourself and bring you back down when you're in a heightened state of stress. And so thinking about when you work with your student, when they're feeling that way, how can you also implement some of these skill sets to them and be like, hey, so tell me like your favorite spot on campus, or what's a spot that when you go to really kind of makes you calm. And they might say like, oh, the Mission Garden, I love the flowers, or the water fountain to be in the front of the campus entrance, or whatever it might be. So that's just an example. Then the last thing I'll want to share with you too is sometimes a student or even yourself, you're so in distress that you're like, lady, there's no way I'm going to be able to like do any of these skills because I just feeling so bad. And that's to be expected. That's definitely something that I know I felt when I was in college. And so these are some help now. And what they do is they kind of they allow the focus to shift from the distressing event into something that's control, right? Like Ashley was saying, bringing control back to the students, something that they can be in charge of. So it could be telling someone, hey, like, just pause. What sounds do you notice? Or what are you seeing right now? Would you like a glass of water? How about we get up from this place and let's go for a walk? have you gone to the bathroom? I know a lot of times when I'm feeling really angsty and irritable, it's because I haven't used the restroom. Right? Hey, let's focus on one thing. I know you got a lot going on, but let's start with the thing that's, due, or what's the thing that's due like first? What's the most urgent thing? Touch something, what are you noticing as you're sitting in this chair, even pushing against a wall to get a lot of that pent up energy. And so these are things that, like I said, you can share with your student, you even yourself can do to help just kind of alleviate that feeling of being out of your well being zone. And then, do you want to cover this, Ashley?
Sure. So in addition to the student groups that we offer in the Wellness Center, we also like to highlight just different organizations in Santa Clara County that also offer groups to students. So we oftentimes refer students to Lily DeFrank, the Q Corner. Um, uh, where is the other one? YWCA. Um, those are all ones in addition to some of like the healthcare that each of these offer as well. If it is outside maybe the scope of what we offer on campus, um, students can also engage either in student groups in these at these organizations or receive just additional care.
Thank you. And so,
Mm-hmm.
lastly, the thing we want to just share and really emphasize with you all is that it's just with your student and each other, and what we try to do here on campus is we really try to come from a place like we share compassion, care, and empathy, right? So we may not know what someone is going through, right? Because we haven't experienced that particular situation, but we can relate in, right? And when we foster this connection, this inclusivity with one another, we're able to provide that support, provide that, like, help the student, help each other with our well-being. And so we just really want to provide, it seemed like a lot of information we gave you. But the beauty of it is we're here today to answer questions. You also can find this information online. You have a great contact from Stephen. But together, right, we can really create this community of care that we can then foster, right, to help our students be successful.
Great. So I'll jump in here and just say that thank you both for presenting on the resources that you all provide. Thank you for walking our audience through what you do with students as far as, strategies and ways to kind of regulate their stress. And thanks for taking us through that exercise. I found it very helpful. So I hope our families did too. Just so you all know, I did unmute you or open the opportunity for you all to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you may have. If there are none, I do have a few that were pre-submitted that I can go through, but I just want to start with all of you. So I'll give it a couple seconds. Great. So let's start with Ashley's world a little bit and maybe a little bit into Danielle's world, and hope you both can answer. Is there any specific outreach in place for students living in residence halls as far as how they interact with, our unaffiliated social Greek life? Like, do you work with them at all?
Yes. So at the beginning of the academic year, um, there's something called the red zone. And that is when students are at the greatest risk for experiencing sexual harm. So, what our violence prevention educators and our peer health educators do is they go into the res halls, they provide um, just additional resources and like educational pamphlets around safer like drinking practices, as well as um, like some bystander intervention tips. So they do that beginning of October, which is also the start of sorority recruitment, and it's also Halloween in October. So they do that. Um, Myself, along with our director of Title IX, have been meeting with all the fraternities and sororities, providing information around what the Title IX process is and what survivor advocacy is and the type of support that they can receive. Um, and then all of the res life staff, so all of our CFs or like community facilitators, which are like an RA, and the pro staff are also trained by the wellness center staff around bystander intervention, Narcan, um, and then like how to support a survivor. So how they should best respond if a student discloses experiences of harm.
Gotcha. Great. Nina, do you want to unmute? Sorry, I had the wrong button clicked.
Oh, sure. Hi. I have a specific question. Is there anywhere, either in the wellness center or on campus, where a kid can go to just be alone? I have a kid who's just there. He feels like there's just nowhere where he can go where he's not running into people on campus. I mean, he was talking to me on the phone and he just wanted to cry, but he had literally nowhere to go. He was walking off campus even and was like, there's people everywhere. And, it's such a small school. Everyone knows each other. Is there anywhere for him to go to just chill?
Yeah. So, and feel free, Ashley, also to jump in because I know you've been here longer than I have. In our Cal Center, which is where the student medical services and our counseling psychological services is housed, there is a room. It's called the wellness room that students can reserve and go in and be alone. There's a massage chair and then like a desk. We have students who do telehealth, so they'll have appointments with their therapist back home that they'll take their calls there. So like your student could definitely go there for a little bit and just be. We sometimes have spaces in our office where if we're not going to be there, I'll speak for myself that I might let a student just, obviously I take away and lock up all the confidential things, but a student can just go. We have kind of a more public foyer, if you will, that can lock. So student, if our assistant director isn't in because we'll do a remote day, then a student can certainly go in there and close the door and just be by themselves. But yes, we do have rooms on campus for that. And then Ashley, I don't know if you have more to offer.
Yeah, I would, and I say this, I don't know how often it is utilized, but in Benson, next to the campus ministry office, there is a meditation room that people can just go in and be. It's been there as long as I've worked here and I just learned about it. So I do know like that could be a great space. Also in the library at the top floor, there is this kind of like, it's not quite an atrium, but it's like an
Mhm.
atrium that is really calm and peaceful. And sometimes I go there just to get out of the office and like have time to myself. So that is also a wonderful place to go. Um,
I just
yeah,
saw, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I just saw in the library too over the weekend that they have sound like 99% soundproof phone booths. So if your student wanted to talk to you, Nina, but didn't want anyone to overhear their conversation, they could go and utilize those that phone booth. It is clear, like right, so we could see in, but you cannot hear. I went in and yelled at my friend, and my friend like did not hear what I had to say. So that also is an option too. If maybe they just want to like talk to you, but didn't want anyone to overhear, that could be a really good place as well.
Where is
And
that
it,
again?
that's in the library.
Okay.
It's
And then
on
how did they
the,
have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. They have one on every floor. And the other thing I was going to say is they also could reserve like a study room too in the library as well for a certain amount of time too.
And where do they find a place to reserve a cowl
They would
center
just,
room?
yeah, they would just talk to the front desk.
Okay.
And they can also call our phone number. I'll drop it in the chat for you and email. So that way, oh, did you already do it? So, and that way they can, I think, yeah, that way they'd be able to call ahead or, just have something there.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, Nina. Um, Jumping back to my list, if there aren't any other questions from the audience right now. You talked a little bit about Jason Munoz and his work in wellness coaching. Are his sessions primarily one-on-one, group sessions, a combination of both? Does it depend? Can you shed some light on that?
Yes. So they are one-on-one. I am not sure he's ever done group, at least that I have yet to see. I don't want to say that it's not a possibility, but I think it would be something to chat with him about and maybe the student if that's what they prefer. Jason does oversee the peer health educators and he also advises Burnout Broncos. And so they're free. And you can schedule an appointment online. He has like a Calendly. I always say Calendly, but that's not right. And you can schedule online as well as with Ashley as too. So whatever works for their schedule. And but you also can do walk-in. We've had some students who come in just needing to talk to someone about the topics that we shared, and they've been able to meet with Jason.
Wonderful. And then I have two final questions that aren't directly related to your world, but I know, Ashley, you've been here almost 3 years, as I have, and Stephanie's coming up on 6 months, or if not past those 6 months, but is so involved on campus. The first one, let's start with, are there any peer-led programs that you all know of where students can join them to meet others and build friendships? I know a common trend, common theme throughout this past year has been a lack of belonging or a lack of friend groups on campus. So, do you know any of these peer-led programs where a student could get involved?
Yeah, I would say in addition to like our peer health educators and our violence prevention educators, which for those teams, they are student staff, but they also are building out almost like a volunteer base as well with students that are feeling really engaged in that work and um, want to get involved. That's also a great way. I would also mention the Multicultural Center, which has I don't know how many student organizations that they have their own space over in the Chappelle Lounge. And from what I've heard from students, is a really wonderful place to connect with peers, especially around um, different identities and interests. We also have Stephen, you probably know better than I do how the number of student organizations, like the clubs,
Hmm.
for I keep learning about new ones that we have for so many different interests and hobbies. And so that is definitely something um, for students to look into. I know we have um, I just keep hearing about new clubs that
Hmm.
I didn't even know existed. So there really is like many different opportunities and they're all peer led. They do have advisors, but it predominantly is students that are overseeing the groups that work together for programming and marketing of their different events. And so like really whatever interest your student might have, I'm sure we have a group on campus for them.
Yeah, so in addition to what Ashley just said about all of our 160 plus registered student organizations, we do have, I believe it's 10, I could be wrong on that number, 10 chartered student organizations. So these ones are what I would call, they're all student led, but they're pseudo professional offices. So they each have a student director and a student associate director who helps run the program. And two that I want to call out just because I know a little bit more about them are SCAP, which is our Santa Clara Community Action Program. They host a ton of volunteering opportunities for many different students to get involved with what they're passionate about, whether that's volunteering at like a Boys and Girls Club, volunteering at food shelters, just finding ways to get involved in the community around Santa Clara. And then the other one is Into the Wild. Um, those are primarily social activities. Each Monday, I believe, they table outside Benson for whatever adventure trip they have coming up during that week. They've done everything from, beginner to intermediate backpacking. During the winter, they went out on ski and snowboarding trips, morning hikes, things like that. So if your student is walking towards Benson around the lunch hour on Mondays and Tuesdays, they'll typically see Into the Wild, and that's such a low-hanging fruit as an easy way to get involved. Some of the trips do have costs associated with them. The easier trips are more nominal, like $10, $15. Some of the, larger scale trips, like the ones they had over spring break, could be upwards of 500, but that also includes whatever lodging they have during that week. So very affordable, something that students should definitely look into.
I'd also like to endorse we have our student groups. We often, even though they're not necessarily our staff, but we always encourage students to volunteer. So I know like the peer health educator have they call the general body membership. So even though they're not necessarily hired staff, they can still participate in tabling or doing programs and what have you. And it is a nice, I would say, intro into the position so that if they are curious about applying for next year, they can. Lots of the offices do things to invite students. So our campus ministry, every Wednesday, they do Wednesday coffee and donuts. So that's free, open to students from 9 to 11, or really anyone, because I know I've eaten a donut there. And then people can come in and then just hang out and talk. Just like what Steve and Ashley said, there's tons of groups. And so they're tabling inside Benson, our student center, outside, and encourage your student to maybe take out their AirPod and kind of walk to a table, which is intimidating, but that is a great way to then be able to say, I'm really interested in your business fraternity. How do I get in? If they live on campus, I know each of the halls, they have some kind of form of for government or an opportunity to work with their community facilitator to do programming. And again, if that's something they eventually want to become, I think that gives them really great experience to then be able to talk about in their interview. So there are tons of opportunities. We understand it can be really intimidating, especially if you're the only one, out of your friend group that wants to go. And I would say encouraging them to be brave and that, they can leave at any time in the meeting if they're like, okay, I gotta go. But most likely they'll meet somebody else who also is in the same boat. And then that can be kind of this gets the ball rolling as far as like getting them involved with the Santa Clara community or Santa Clara University community.
One last thing I do want to mention, just because Stephanie and I just attended this on Monday, and it was such a beautiful experience seeing so many students come together. Um, in the Forge Garden on Monday nights is Nourish Night, and it's free for students to come and have a meal with other students. And there were probably 45 to 50 that were there for the hour. Um, and it was just like so cool to see students interacting with one another, introducing friends to new friends. And so that's also a really it's a very lovely space on campus, but is also a really cool opportunity for students to meet other people and also learn about sustainability and get pretty good free meal.
Can I ask another real quick question?
Yeah.
Like if someone just walks into the wellness center, what would happen? What would they expect to happen if they just walk in?
Yeah. So we encourage, so it's house, if we will be there, one of us will be there, but typically have our student staff also sit there in the front desk, and they are taught to greet students as they walk in. So just letting them know, like, welcome, we're glad you're here. Do is there a purpose here? What are you looking for? And if they're like, I just want to do homework or I want to do the massage chair, they'll say, great, come on in. We do have amenities to offer. So we have water, coffee, tea, tea, we have snacks, we have coloring books, whatever you like. But if they're like, oh, maybe they're there for appointment, I'm here to see Ashley. Okay, great. We'll let her know, have a seat. Or and this has happened actually a couple of times for me the past 2 weeks. Oh, I just need to talk to someone. The student will find to see if anyone's available, and then they'll have a person like, oh, this is Stephanie. She's available for you to talk with. And then from there, this couple students I've had to talk with, we've been able to then go together to get further assistance at the counseling and psychological services, for instance, or taking them to um, wherever else on campus. So that's what they can expect. If for some reason, because students also have classes, no one's at the front, again, like I said, one of us will be there. So there's a bell they can ring and we'll pop out to let them know that like we're here, what are you looking for? But yeah, it's not invasive as to like, tell me your reason, but just general, like what brings you here so we know where to direct you, and help
Thank you
you
very
with what
much.
you're looking for. Yeah, of course.
Great. So one last pre-submitted question. This one we could host a whole podcast about, but they ask, how does the university support students in building social connections? They share that some families have mentioned that, RLC and intramural programming feel inconsistent and not fully engaging. I know we have one of our pillars for our Impact 2030 goal is to find this sense of belonging for all Broncos. So each individual unit at the university works towards this sense of belonging, this sense of inclusion. Do you want to speak to anything that you all do outside of what was already mentioned? I know one thing I want you to highlight would be our division-wide study break, and how you all added to that experience for the fall and then this past winter one.
Yeah. I'll start with that and then maybe give you some time, Ashley, to talk about bring some other stuff. So in the fall, we wanted to do something. Our division of student life wanted to do something for the students, as it was a pretty tough fall for students, but also for staff and faculty. So really wanting to give them a break. So we had a campus-wide study break event during finals week, where we had everything from like a mechanical reindeer, a hot dog grilling station, photo booth up, with the snow globe machine. We brought therapy bunnies on campus, lots of free food, like mini apple pies, a hot cocoa bar, gift bag making, slime making, etc. So that was something that the students really appreciated, and having the few hours to do so. And then we also solicited feedback, which was great because then it was able to give us the guidance for the study break event in winter quarter, which I helped chair the committee. And so we moved it to the week before finals, where students would be most likely around. We dialed back a little bit on like more of the bigger attractions and focus a little bit more on like, I think food was a big one, and also having more quiet activities for students who maybe didn't want to ride the mechanical reindeer, for instance. Therapy bunnies did come back, which is always popular, but it's great because, I think originally we thought, great, we'll have the study break event in fall, but then a ton of students were like, oh man, I can't wait for the winter one. And so then it was like, all right, well, let's do a winter break one. We won't do one in the spring just because we have so many programs happening with all of our different organizations, but I think we're already preparing for possibly another one in the fall. So this is kind of how things get started, is that students show this big interest and let us know. And then of course we want to do what is working best for the students. But, we saw a lot of students coming in, but just getting that like free bag of popcorn or a little snack bag, you could tell as they walked away, they were just feeling a little bit more grounded. So it's a fun way too for our staff and faculty get involved because we ask volunteers. And so students are able to see them in a different light than, in offices, in meetings, in the classroom, et cetera.
Um, I'm trying to think. So I know we had for the Super Bowl, the week leading up to the Super Bowl and then the day of the Super Bowl, different opportunities for students to come together. We had field goal kicking challenge and football throwing challenges that I know students really appreciated. some different watch parties and like Super Bowl squares. So um, I think that was something, I believe something is being planned for the World Cup as well. But I also think on an individual level, I know myself and Jason and Stephanie, I think you've had conversations with students as well of so many students now are interacting and building relationships and relating to their peers through technology, um, communicating through text rather than in person. And so I think a lot of the programming that we're offering is really to give them that space to disconnect from their phones and be present with their peers. But I also know we have conversations with students all the time as they're having a hard time navigating communication and like the communication skills with their roommates, with their friend groups. And so I think that is also something on an individual basis that we are doing to help students not only navigate if there are changes in dynamics in their social groups, but then also um, empowering them and encouraging them to find other spaces that um, they can show up authentically and that allow them to feel that sense of joy rather than um, feeling anxious interacting with peers that they may not like fully align with.
Great. And I will just end with there are so many events that we as a university put on in different areas to engage students with one another, to engage with us. But as you all know, it's difficult to get students to want to do that, or they like to claim that they didn't know about it. The university, and as many others, typically communicate with all students just via email, just because it's the easiest way to get a hold of our 6,000 plus undergraduate students. So if they're not reading emails, they're missing opportunities. So if we could do one thing for us, it would be to encourage your students to read those emails, open those. I know they get a lot each day, but if they could find 4 or 5 that they say, let me flag this, I'll read these ones, I guarantee they'll find more ways to engage with the university. But other than that, it's after 1. Thank you all for your time today. I will try to get the slides and the recording posted and sent out to you all by the end of the week. And if nothing else, thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Ashley and Stephanie, for presenting. This was great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.